And I am here with Casey Riles and Kevin Scott. We're super excited to have them. So they're going to be talking about their books and a little bit about their experiences that led to the books. And if you know anyone who's having any problems logging in, just have them send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat here and I'll help them log in while the authors are talking. I'm going to do a little introduction for them and then they're going to talk to us. And if you have any questions, I would really like some engagement from the audience, so please feel free to ask any questions you have for them. If it's for both authors, mention that. If it's for one or the other, tell me which one it's for and just put it in the chat and I will ask them for you guys. So first off, we're going to introduce J. Casey Riles, who is a successful risk manager and enthusiastic entrepreneur. Since entering the business sector, he has become a student of the human mind, studying motivation and the decision-making process in a search to determine what really drives us. Above all, he considers his role as a husband to his wife, Allie, and father to his 3 daughters his most important work in life. Lack of self-management skills is the reason we are so anxious and frustrated with our work. Last to least sets out to change not just what we do, but give us an identity at work that cannot be threatened by stress or fear. We can be the most productive version of ourselves and achieve the purpose of which our work was designed. And that book again is called Last to Least. I don't have a copy handy yet, but I will have signed copies in stock soon. And next we have Kevin Paul Scott, who is the author of this lovely book. He has spoken to leaders on 6 continents from more than 100 countries. Kevin is the co-founder of ADDO, a leadership consultancy based in Atlanta, Georgia. ADO exists to inspire people today to impact tomorrow. Prior to founding ADO, Kevin's background included nonprofit charitable work, business ventures, and politics. For his leadership and business acumen, Kevin is a frequent guest on Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Known for his grassroots appeal and Southern charm, Kevin speaks extensively at businesses, to educators, and within the faith community. He and his wife, Laura, live in Marietta, Georgia, and he's joining us from there today. And I believe Casey said he was in Gainesville, so we're very happy to have both of you. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Great to have you.
Casey, you gonna kick it off?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I know Jackie said she would give us a minute to kind of say hello. So hello. Thank you all for having us. This is very cool. Jackie was telling us a little bit about how Hub City got started. And I was like, man, this is a very cool organization. So very thankful to be hanging out with you for just a few minutes. Not far away from Spartanburg. I'm in Gainesville, Northeast Georgia. So, back in the day before, I'll tell y'all one cool fact about South Carolina over there. My brother, back in the day, we used to do crazy stuff together. So disclaimer, I'm a different kind of guy. But he would drive, he and a couple of his buddies would drive from Gainesville to Anderson, South Carolina, because you could still smoke inside over there. So that's my fun fact about South Carolina, up 85. So we're close. But yeah, I started, I've been in the insurance business for about 13 years. That may not have been the best way to introduce myself to you guys, but I like to have a little fun. But no, I started the insurance business about 13 years ago. I got an insurance agency in Gainesville, Georgia that I manage and have 6 licensed folks who work for me and then 3 secretaries in our office. And so insurance is nothing sexy, but we try to do our best to really meet the needs of our customers. And it's something we take very seriously. And then about 5 years ago, my brother and I started a paving company. Another non-sexy industry is, asphalt paving. So we've been doing that for about 5 years now. And then I would say about that same time, we started kind of looking into applying the principles that I use to operate an insurance agency over to a paving company. And that's kind of how Last to Least kind of started bubbling up. Is I was trying to explain, I got the opportunity to manage an agency for the first time. It wasn't actually in Gainesville. Here in Gainesville, it's a fairly large city. But the first place I ever got to manage an agency was in Homer, Georgia, population 2,000. And so I started going in and really tried to lean into my team there and tried to explain to them how I lead myself. And I told them, I said, if I can really teach you how to lead yourself, I can give you better tools than if I try to lead or manage you on a daily basis. Kind of like the old teach a man to fish instead of give a man a fish. So I want to teach you how to lead yourself instead of me leading or managing you on a daily basis. And so we started kind of laying out these principles, and I didn't call it last to least at the time. At the time, I just said, this is the way I work. And they had seen me have a lot of individual success in our insurance agency. We give out awards and trinkets for everything. And so, they had seen me be #1 in production in our company a few years in a row. And they're like, tell us, the magic bullet. Give us the magic bullet. Tell us how you have, your success. So I started laying out these principles, and one of the guys kind of jumped on board. His name was Chip, and he told me I could share his name all the time too. So he was third from last in our entire company in his ranking reports. And, and he was struggling, and he had been there for about 15 years. And 12 months later, after putting this kind of into play, he was third from the top in our entire company in the ranking reports. And so I had a relapse. I started telling him, I was like, bro, you're going from worst to first. You're like Sid Bream. So we started calling him Sid Bream. I don't know if you guys know the 1990 Braves went from worst to first. And it's like that's a lot of times when we're trying to go ahead or, have success. A lot of times we're like, okay, tell me how to get to the top. And so that's what I started telling Chip. I was like, man, you're Sid Bream. You went from worst to first. And then shortly after that, I had to repent. I was like, Chip, I'm sorry. That is not what you did at all. Because what I asked him to do, I was like, throw these ranking reports out the window. And what I asked him to do was make himself the least important person in that transaction. And then in turn, make his customer, his client, his community the most important in that transaction. So really, I said, you didn't go from worst to first. You went from last to least. We said that. I remember the day we said that in the office there. We were joking around, and I was like, hey, somebody needs to write that down. That's good. So we did write it down. And so really, last to least, what it was, a lot of people from different parts of Georgia would come and kind of sit down with us and say, okay, what's this special sauce? That next year, we were actually the Agency of the Year, competing against, people in Atlanta and Macon and every big city. With population 2,000 over in Homer. So a lot of people started coming by, and they would send people to Shadow and say, what are y'all doing differently than everybody else? And I always thought it was kind of funny because we weren't doing it. We didn't have a magic bullet. We really tried to meet people's needs. And so that's really kind of the heart of last to least, is how do I lead myself by learning to forget myself? How do I lead myself by learning to forget myself? And the implications when that actually happens in my life, it's insane, the implications. And so that's what I try to do in the book, is try to kind of just walk through that system of how I lead myself, how I teach my team members, whether it's in insurance or paving, how to lead themselves, and then walk through what results we can look for in our lives. So again, thank y'all for letting us be here. I think this is so cool. And then I'm really pumped to hear about Kevin's book as well. We just met tonight too. So yeah, I may be the main question asker when it comes.
That's what I was going to ask Casey a couple questions first before
Go ahead, man, bring it.
Casey, you're talking about that from a business perspective. How would you say those principles apply beyond business? If somebody's in education, or they're in ministry, or they're in nonprofit world?
Oh man, that's Dan Pink is one of my favorite authors. He has one of the top 10 most watched TED Talks of all time. And he wrote a book called To Sell is Human. And if you're going to read one book this year, read Kevin's and then Dan Pink's and then mine. That would be the order. But Dan Pink's book is phenomenal. He actually endorsed Last to Least for me. Let's see. He said, self-management is important, perhaps more important than management itself. This book will help you make your next wise move. I thought that was very kind of him. But in To Sell is Human, he actually said that all of us are trying to persuade somebody. No matter if it's being an entrepreneur, if you're in education, if you're in the healthcare field, if you're in traditional sales, he was like, we're all trying to be persuasive. And absolutely, so what you're saying, in any of those realms, are we trying to persuade people? that's really when we need to be able to steer ourselves well. And so does it apply over to all these other areas? 100%. I've got a guy who's a pastor who read the book early, and he was like, he calls me often. He was like, man, listen to how I applied last to least today, you know, in these areas. And it's been really cool to even walk through that with him.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, man.
I haven't read it yet. I gotta get this.
We're going to swap it up, baby. We're going to swap it up after tonight. I'm going to read Lynn's.
Well, why don't I, Jackie, you want me to go for a couple minutes, and then we'll just maybe take some Q&A from you and from each other?
That'd be perfect.
So I told Jackie, I've never done a virtual event like this with a bookstore. So I'm so excited. I think it's really neat, the concept behind Hub City and what you guys do from a community. I love to read. Grew up, I didn't like school that much, but I like to read. And I like to read fiction books, and I like to read historical books, especially biographies. And then I've got to be honest, I was pretty nerdy, and I really enjoyed reading these leadership and management books. It wasn't something my parents read. It wasn't around my house, but I loved it. It was, at that time, it was John Maxwell and Zig Ziglar, and I was consuming it. I wanted to apply it. And here was the problem that I learned. The messages they were saying were true, and they worked. They were timeless leadership principles. But the challenge was that those authors were not connecting as well with my generation, especially when I was in college. You know, somebody like John Maxwell would say, don't worry about making money, worry about making a difference. And I'm like, yeah, that's easy for you to say, you're rich. Like, you know, I wouldn't worry about that either if I had as much money as you had. But I knew what he was saying was true. We just needed a different message. And so I wrote my first book before I was 30 years old. It's a book called 8 Essential Exchanges. And the idea was really that anything that you really want in life to be successful, it requires sacrifice. You've got to give up something to get what you really want. And it was a challenge. I thought it was a challenge to young people to make those decisions. But what I learned is that it just works. It applies for everybody. And I love what Casey said, just him changing even worst to first to last to least, because what my latest book is about, it's all about perspective. If there is anything that we've learned over the last year with COVID, is that our world has been rocked and our perspectives have been shifted. And we see things in a totally different way. And I say that perspective is important because how we view things changes how we do things. And the reason I'm still such a fan and a proponent about the power of books, again, whether it's fiction, business, biography, leadership, health and fitness, whatever the book is because a book can change your perspective. And if you change your perspective, you can change your life. I mean, think about this. If I read Casey's book and I learned about this, I'm going to go back into my job and everything is still going to be the same. Same challenges, same people, same frustrations. None of those circumstances change. But if I'll change my perspective, how I view things, it'll change how I do things. And if I change how I do things, I can get radically different results. And so I just believe that if we can share principles in messages that people understand and they can apply, it has the ability to change their lives. And so I love getting to do that through books. One just personal note, our company, that's what we do all the time. So I'm fortunate enough that this isn't just kind of a side thing. It's what we do. Our company is Latin for inspire, and we help companies like Chick-fil-A train leaders and recruit talent. We help the Baltimore Ravens creating a program that's transforming education in high schools in Baltimore City, a place that desperately needs it. And so I love that opportunity to invest in people. And I can't wait to hear maybe some questions you guys have and maybe just some insights that I can learn from tonight as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was wonderful. And thank you guys for the questions you have for each other, those really help invite some of the similarities between your two books, and not necessarily they both have like a different message, but they both can be really, really beneficial for someone to look into, especially if they're looking to kind of change how they look at things. Casey, do you have any questions for Kevin before we start, or do you want me to go into audience questions?
Yeah, I wanted to know, when you were talking about the in Baltimore, say that again, what you're doing up there?
So we have a program in Baltimore called the Baltimore Ravens Leadership Institute. And it's, we had a conversation with the Ravens, and they said, we have a big problem in our public schools. We need something. But one of the things that they understood is the power of their brand. I think when brands can understand their influence, and they said if they put their brand on a program in the community, students will want to come. Now, if we said what's the name of your paving company, Casey?
Ryals Brothers.
Okay, Ryals Brothers. We said the Ryals Brothers Paving Company has got a leadership program. In your community, it mean a lot. In Baltimore, probably not a whole lot.
Yeah, not at all. Not yet.
If we said the Addo leadership program or the Hub City leadership program, it just doesn't have the same thing. But man, the Ravens, people will sign up to come.
Sure.
In the community. And so they understood that, but they knew they needed to make it relevant for those students. And so that's what we do, is just help design a curriculum that helps those students see a bigger and brighter future for themselves. And really, for a lot of them, it's a way out of poverty and a cycle, multi-generational with their families, falling into the same kind of trap. So
how big is the person who's presenting that material? The material, I'm sure, just from hearing you, is amazing. So how big of a role is the person presenting that material right there on the ground? How big of a role do they play in that?
It's a lot. I mean, that's, when I first wrote my book, and this will tie back to the Ravens, Casey, somebody told me you either have to have a unique message, you have to have a unique voice, or you have to have a unique platform. It's helpful if you got all three. If you got a new message, a different voice, but you may take the same message and have a different voice, or you may take, you've got the same message and the same voice, but you just have a different platform of who you're reaching. For them, it's really important that they are able to communicate the principles they're trying to teach, but in the language of the learner. And I think that's where most companies struggle, is they've got the right ideas, but they don't know how to communicate them in a way that works that group. And so it's very important who they have communicating it, but that's where we provide that coaching.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, you're almost investing in the coaches as much as you're investing in the people who the coaches are investing. You're almost, going in, investing in the coaches and giving them an opportunity to invest in the students, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
All right, Casey.
Are you guys also investing, Kevin, in players? Are players sometimes teaching the students that too, or is it generally just the coaches?
Players, a lot of times it's former players, because these guys are so busy, but it's those kind of folks that are, got a little bit more free time on their hands, but still have that same level of prestige that people are interested in. So, hey, Casey, I see we got some questions in this chat. I'm going to read one of these to you, and then I'll answer a second, but Maggie has an awesome question, and I want to let you have a good answer first, and then I'll try to steal it and take credit for it. Maggie said, this is so cool, Maggie. You spent the end of your career in the public sector, HR for a county. So you're doing HR, but for a government entity. Can you comment on how you would envision your principles can be effectively applied in the public sector?
Yes, absolutely. So when I talk about, like, to our team, when we say we're the least important, we're actually trying to take our needs and put them down here, and in the work itself, the actual work that we do, we're trying to meet the needs of those around us. And I was actually talking to a gentleman who is, he's over facilities management at a local hospital. I think he told me they had about 144 buildings that he's responsible for. And he was telling me, he was like, when I hire somebody, he was like, Casey, I try to see in here. I want to make sure that that when I hire this person, if they're going to turn a wrench, that they can connect the dots between that wrench and a life that's saved in the ER. And I'm like, man, bro, like that is, I told him, I was like, Bill, that's last to least, man. It's finding meaning in the work itself, not just finding meaning. I've said this a lot of times. It's not finding meaning while you work, but it's finding meaning in the actual task that I'm doing by connecting it to the need that it actually meets in the community. And so some people have asked me that even about paving, because you said, in the public sector, like in a county government, some people said, how do you connect paving, to, I mean, a paved road makes it where I can get from that, my house across that bridge into that county office, so that you can actually do that role that you were doing in HR, so that we all actually thrive as a community. We're obviously better together than we are segmented. And so if I can connect the dots for those folks, like when I go into a business or a chamber of commerce where we're connecting business and government, and we're talking about, what is last to least look like in my job, it's really looking at what need am I actually meeting, whether I'm in the accounting department or HR or doing paving or insurance or whatever. What's the need that I'm actually meeting? And to really set my attention on that, instead of what we all kind of go toward is like, well, what I'm really here for is to get my paycheck, or what I'm really here for is the weekend. I got to get through this and then I get to the weekend. But if I can really set my attention away from those things, even though they're all hugely important pieces of the puzzle, profits and incentives are valuable. But if I can set my mind and attention on needs, I can actually find meaning in my work. It gives me a more of a sense of meaning in my job. And then and a lot of studies will show that if I can find meaning in the work itself, my productivity goes through the roof. So I've actually seen that work a lot of times in the public sector, just like the private.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna say what he said. Here's this morning I was in Athens, Georgia, and I was speaking to the Georgia Council of Court Administrators. So it was folks that work in the public sector in courtrooms across the state of Georgia. And it was interesting because you mentioned something, Casey, about like that profit incentive. And I think one of the things they told me that some of their peers are struggling with is when there isn't a profit incentive is, okay, now we've got to, COVID happens, we've got to change our system. We got to go virtual. We have to do things differently. But if they work harder, they're not going to necessarily make any more money. So how do you tap in if you don't have those extrinsic motivations? How do you tap into those intrinsic motivations? And I think what Casey's talking about is spot on. And you have to figure out, one of the things I say in the lens is, one of the chapters is shifting our perspective on profit, and what I would say is shift your perspective, because profit isn't the ultimate goal. It's just a way to keep score along the way.
Reach.
But one of the things that I ask groups is to think, what is their version of profit? I love this. I spoke to a group of teachers, and this is what they said. For us as teachers, profit is our test scores. I'm like, tell me what that means. And they said, a lot of people are all focused on test scores. It's all test scores. It's all test scores. It's all test scores. And she's like, and now we've created this division that either we have to be all about test scores, or we should hate tests, despise tests, and tests don't matter. And she said, the goal isn't tests. The goal is students learning and getting to the next level in life. But tests are one way we can measure if we're being successful or not. Not the way, but a way. I think in business, profit is not the only way, it's a way. And in the public sector, that's what the challenge is finding what is that definition of success? What are you aspiring for, and how do you measure that? So I'm going to learn about it more from Casey's book. It's going to be fun.
Thanks, brother.
All right, I'm going to take.
Well, you have one. You have one.
Graham.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I was just gonna voice it for Graham. That was awesome, by the way. You guys both answered that so thoroughly and different perspectives. That was really wonderful. Thank
When
you.
you say thoroughly, Jackie, do you just mean we talk too much? I mean, I'm trying to pick up.
No. No.
I'm kidding.
Some people will just kind of give you like a pat answer, and you guys like dug into it. I really, really like that. Kevin, when it comes to helping teach people how to change their perspective, have you found people are more willing to shift, to have perspective shifts at a younger age or older age in life?
Yeah. Graham, is a great question. And I think it depends on the shift you're trying to have them come. I would give two ways that I've seen perspectives being shifted. The first one is when it hurts enough that they've got to change their perspective. Like COVID, we don't have an option but to change our perspective. Things aren't normal. Things are different. We can't go in, like something external is happening where we just don't have another option. But we don't usually like those things. We're not trying to get more of those things. We're not trying to find more hard things. So the other way that you can change your perspective or change other people's perspective is by showing them a different way. And I have found why I love the book title, Last to Least, just Casey initially, is there is a theologian, and don't worry, I'm not going to preach. I would take up an offering if we were in person, but there's this theologian that said that people learn best through contrast. So if you actually look even in scripture, anytime, regardless of your feelings, when Jesus was talking, one of the things he would say is like, he didn't just say, hey, there's this one sheep that left. He said, hey, there were 99 sheep and one left, and the shepherd left 99 to go get one. He's showing us through contrast how important that one sheep is. Or just, there wasn't just a son, the prodigal son that went away from home. There was another son that stayed. And so when you contrast them, and so I find, Graham, one of the best ways to help people change their perspective is teaching through contrast. If you say, you know what, we should pursue excellence. Everybody's like, yeah, of course. That's a stupid comment. We know we should pursue excellence. When you say, when we're faced with a decision where we can choose expedience, doing it quickly, or we can choose excellence, doing it well, it's better to give up expedience to do something with excellence. By creating that contrast, you help people to put a picture in their mind and more clearly make those decisions. So, I think young or old is less important than, is there an external factor that's causing their perspective to shift? Or are you helping create that case for them of why they should be shifting? Does that make sense? Hope that helps.
No, that's great.
Casey, do you have a similar view on that question or anything to add?
No, I totally disagree. I'm just kidding.
Okay, if you do.
That is so cool. No, that's I loved hearing you talk about that, because I would say the same about the age is less important. You said it's an outside factor, and really what I've seen over and over again. Well, I actually have a scrap with some people in my industry. We use these really cool tests to determine if somebody's going to be successful in a sales career, and I think they're awesome, and I think we should use them. But if I believed that we were all confined to that test score, then I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be writing a book. I wouldn't be listening to Kevin about how to change your perspective, because I would just say, you know what, we are what we are. And a lot of people believe that, they're like, well, here we are. This is how I've always been. And so this is how I'm going to be. So if you don't score this certain score on this test, man, we just need to move on to somebody else who does. And to me, that's very, very frustrating, because I'm like, that takes out the fact that somebody can have that kind of perspective shift. And what I've seen it happen over and over again is it's the outside factors, like Kevin was talking about, maybe causes it. But what ends up happening is there's this inside thing, and I call it like a confrontation in the book. But it has to happen, because I'm not going to shift my perspective, as Kevin said, until I first realize my current perspective is jacked up. I mean, why do I need a new perspective if I don't first say, this is not working? And I just see that a lot of times I poke at people too hard, probably, because I'm like, until you get there to where you're like, you know what, this is not working, then you're really not going to look for that new perspective. But if you do get to the point, like I have in my life, where Kevin was talking about how John Maxwell would say, look to make a difference, not to make money. it's like when you keep on trying to make money, and it doesn't work out that well, you have to say, okay, maybe I'll try John Maxwell's way. And then you try John Maxwell's way, and it's like, holy cow, I was really going out to make a difference. But then this money started flowing in too. So maybe he's on to something. But it started with this. It started with the heart, something in here saying, man, whatever I'm doing right now, it's not working for me. So I need some new information. And maybe the outside, what Kevin was talking about, maybe the outside caused that. But until I can get somebody there to where they just say, you know what, I need some help from somebody. Kevin, my teacher, my priest, somebody, give me some help. Then I'm never going to really have a big shift.
Thank you, Casey. That was actually kind of similar to a question that I was going to ask you guys. That leads into that. Your books are both very, they're both intended for someone who's on the cusp of wanting to change or finding change in some way. Are they intended for people who are looking for some perspective shift to pick up, or is there kind of someone who doesn't know they need a perspective change could also read the book and find that perspective? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I get that question. So I would say I'm going to market it to somebody who thinks they need a perspective change, because somebody who doesn't think they need one is not even thinking about going from anywhere to anywhere else. They're just going down their line here. But does somebody need that? What I would hope is that, just like I've had some people come into my life, even unexpected over the years, and maybe just point out a few things, that I could do better. And sometimes they're not even really trying to help me, but I can still gain wisdom from that. And, maybe what I would hope is that, I know, Jackie, you're thinking about somebody in particular right now. You're like, if they knew this, I'm just kidding. But no, I would think it'd be cool if you could do that for them, is to say, look, I think this book would really help you. It helped me in these 3 ways. And if you would read this, I think it'd really help you. And again, they may read it and be like, you know what? That's exactly what I've always thought. Because that's what a lot of people have told me, is I'll say last to least is making yourself the least important. And they'll say, yeah, it's like self-care. You got to take care of yourself before you take care of other people. And I'm like, no, that's not what I said at all. So it's like, I didn't say that at all, but for some reason, what was already here, they just heard what I said and just said, yeah, that's the same thing I've always thought. And so I would say it's very tough, if you're not looking for a shift, to read my book in particular. Unless somebody you love comes in and says, hey man, like, here, this would help you.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. Kevin, what about your book? Is that something that somebody would be looking for, like a leadership book, for instance, and might pick up your book and it introduce some perspective changes that they weren't anticipating, or like guide them gently into it? Or do they have to go into it knowing that they want that shift?
It's such an interesting question, because Jackie, just full transparency, the way that most people end up with my book is because their boss or somebody at work has bought it and said, we're going to do this as a group. Because what I found, and you know what, the truth is, you can do this with about any book, because there is any good leadership book, because what people are looking for in their workplace is a common language. If Jackie, you and I work together and we're both reading the same thing at the same time, we can talk about something because we have that same language. It's like, hey, when it says eat that frog, what does that mean? And today we're going to there's power in that. So a lot of times somebody that's purchasing this book is buying it because they want these other people to read it. And what I find is they go with that lens, but they end up getting something themselves out of it. They get it. It's kind of like you're sitting there and you hear somebody say to me, you're like, I wish so-and-so knew that. But then, it's not just for them, it's also for you. So this would be different for me than some of my other books. And, Casey's, I feel like with what you're looking for, you're much more likely to have an individual pick up that book and say, I'm looking for this. I don't think the lens that happens nearly as often with as maybe 8 Essential Exchanges that I've written.
That helps a lot. Thank you. One of the reasons I was asking that is just for our marketing at the shop is like how, if somebody comes in looking for a book, how do you choose maybe what kind of book you would offer to that person? So when Casey said I had a particular person in mind, it was mostly a customer. Like, some of them come looking for that and some of them just come in like, I'm looking for your business section. Would they, for example, go for that book and pick it up? So that answered my question. Thank you.
I think mine, I've noticed, there's a lot of material about motivation, speaking to that point specifically. And, motivation has 2 characteristics, and one is intensity and one is direction. So intensity is the one we always think of, the football coach yelling, go, 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 and faster, faster, faster. And most motivational speakers, or, if you write a motivational book, it's about intensity. How do we go faster? But the truth is, if I'm going really fast in the wrong direction, the most motivated person is the one who changes direction. And so really that, the nerdy, organizational behavior way to say what my book is about is it's about motivation, but not intensity. It's about direction, changing the direction of my motivation.
Good.
There's another question for Casey. From Austin, do you have plans to write more books? And if so, what topics are you hoping to cover?
Austin, what's up, brother? I like that haircut, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's right. I like this. We got this ball deal going on, man. Yes, I would absolutely love to write some more. The Last to Lease is going to be like my song for the rest of my life. So Last to Lease will be, if Lord willing, it'll be my financial piece, like my man Dave Ramsey. I would love to create more material around Last to Least, so that it could be, something that I know. I have a real estate agent buddy who's like, if you will create a way, like a study guide for this, and give us, train us as leaders to be Last to Least certified presenters, she's like chomping at the bits to do this. So that would probably be something very soon I want to do for sure, is to start, creating some more material around Last to Least. But what I'm working on right now, Austin, is it's going to be like a little short guy. But it's just, I think about wisdom all the time, because I say one of the most powerful questions that we ask in my businesses is, what is your next wise move? And I talk about that in the book. What's your next wise move? In risk management, you look out into the future and there's like all these variables and what could happen in the future. And then this one could affect this one and that could, all these things, and everything gets jumbled. But what is really clarifying is, okay, what is your next wise move? I know we have to do all those things in the next 2 weeks, but what's the next one we can do right now? So we ask that question a lot. And so wisdom becomes something that I read a lot of material about. What's my next wise move? What's my next wise move? And so what I'm working on right this minute, Austin, is it's like 5 senses to make your next wise move. Senses are how we receive data: smell, touch, taste, whatever they are. There's 5 of them. That's how we receive data, and then we decide how to react to it. If the plate's hot, we move our hand back. So I've been thinking through a lot, and I've created these little cutesy things, how to say this, where I can kind of look and think through how I'm receiving data right now, to look for counselors, to listen to challengers. I talked about that just a minute ago, how that sometimes in my life, challengers have come into my life and they really weren't trying to help me at all, but they still had some things that actually helped me get better. And it's really hard to do if you think about it. It's really hard to receive that kind of information and get better when somebody's trying to hurt you. You just want to put up a wall and shut them off. But look for counselors, listen to challengers, and there's a few more. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. I actually think it'll be really, really helpful. And I'm gonna make it short, so it could be something that could be like something you could reference often, to be like, if I'm trying to make a decision, or I'm trying to try to determine my next steps, my next move, is I can just kind of walk through these senses, gather that data, and then it'll really help me take a next wise move. I think it'll be really practically helpful. But thank you for asking that, man. I think y'all are the first person I've ever told that, so y'all don't tell anybody. It's a secret.
I'm excited to see that one. How about you, Kevin? Are you working on any new books right now?
Oh, my next book is going to be called The New ROI. In business world, you think of ROI as being a return on investment, meaning if I spend money here, am I going to get it back? I want us to think about it differently. I want us to think about a return on inspiration, because I believe that too many people think inspiration is abstract, it's fluffy, it's the soft stuff. But the science is proving, the University of Pennsylvania researchers have created an inspiration scale, and they can measure individuals, how inspired they are. And the more inspired they are, the more engaged they are at work, the more loyal the customers are. And so I believe that inspiration actually leads to better results, more effective processes, and bigger profits. So that's next for me. I think there is a real return on inspiration.
Thanks, Kevin. Graham said he likes that idea a lot. In all caps. I was going to read a message from Maggie real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
She was talking right after your addressing of her questions that she loves this discussion and insights. And I encourage you to find ways to bring your energy, enthusiasm, and message to people in the public sector. You hit many of the challenges on the head and could really help make a meaningful difference to folks who bring critical services to their communities. She also asked Casey if he had considered marketing his book as The One You Never Knew You Needed, and he said he would work on that. And there's 2 books that she suggested that I would love you guys' insight on too, if you've read either one of those. Color Outside the Lines and Water the Bamboo.
I haven't read them, but I'm added to the list. I took my phone out and started putting them on the wish list. So tell my wife, I tell her, hey, don't order those from Amazon. Call Hub City. Get them from there.
I'm sure we have them. How about you, Casey? Have you heard of those?
No, I'm sorry, I haven't. Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I wish I have. I'm sorry, Maggie.
No, that's why we have book talks, to talk about more books that we need to read.
Yeah, I think you need to call Jeff and Greg and see if they'll do one of these. But Maggie, I would just say to your part about the public service piece, I think you're spot on. I think it is desperately needed. And if we can find ways to get that message out, it's a game changer. These are not statistics that people don't know, but every year you look at Gallup's study on employee engagement, and I'm sure Casey has, and it's terrible. And it's something like 55% are disengaged and another 16% are actively disengaged. Jim Collins used to call the people that are actively disengaged, he called them onboard terrorists. He says they show up to work every day trying to figure out how to bring the deal down. But you take those together and it really just reminds you that, people spend a lot of time at work and they're not connected and not engaged. And so anywhere we can take that message. So Maggie, thanks for what you did there. I think that's really great.
Kevin, it's the 2 things, again, organizational behavior, just being a nerdy, but is job performance and job performance and organizational commitment. And when you can find satisfaction in your job, that would be those 2 ends. Any organization should be going toward those 2 ends, increasing their employees' job performance and then increasing their employees' organizational commitment. We want you to do a great job, then we want you to hang around. That's the 2 things we're shooting for. And really, job satisfaction, what you're talking about, finding meaning in your work, those kind of quotients have definitely positive correlation with job performance, but off the charts correlation with organizational commitment, which I know you work with, like with these organizations you're working with more. I mean, if you finding meaning and contentment in my work, off the charts creates loyalty to my organization. So any organization is looking for, that kind of help. And as in public sector too, because they're just kind of, it's hard to keep good folks there.
The second one is commitment to the organization. What was the first piece?
Job performance and organizational commitment. That's right off the old slides at my MBA at UGA. Go Dogs.
I love it. You know what's interesting in that? Because every time, and it happened today when I was speaking to this court administrator group, undoubtedly somebody will ask a question about millennials. Well, how does this apply to millennials? What are we going to do? You know, the millennials are killing the country and they're never, you know, it's interesting. UNC, Keenan Flagler School of Business did a study on millennials, and what they found millennials are most looking for in a job. Number one thing, if I ask people, they'd say flexibility, time off, more money. Number one thing they're looking for, 65% said the number one consideration in the job they chose was the opportunity for personal development. I think that's what they really want, somebody to invest and pour into them. And I think what Casey's saying is so spot on. And I wish we had 150 organizational leaders on the call that understood if they would just invest in people, they'll get those two things. Maggie's like amening over there. I love it because she knows that's what it is. But Casey, your message is so true. And you get both of those things. You get the performance and the commitment when you invest in them. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes when you make this shift you're talking about from last to least. So I think more people need to hear that message.
We said there was Charles Schwartz, and he wrote a book about, he's got not Charles, Barry Schwartz is Why We Work. He wrote a book called Why We Work. And he tells this story, and it's a lot of research and a lot of nerdy stuff along with it, but he tells a story about some hospital janitors. And he says that they would go in and they surveyed the ones who found the most meaning in their work. And he tried to connect the dots there between the ones that really got after it and the ones that, showed up on time, that they'd never got written up. And he tried to show the correlation between the ones who found meaning in the work. And I like to disagree. So I'm going to disagree with him on one thing, though. I'm agreeing so far. But the next thing he said, the way he described these janitors, is he said that they would help, roll patients down the hallway when they needed it. Or he said if the janitor saw somebody in the waiting room, they would go in and try to console the family. And so what they were doing, I mentioned this earlier, but those janitors were finding meaning while they worked. And we can do something that's even more powerful than that. That's powerful. They found, like I said, they found this, they recreated this study over and over again in different hospitals and found out that the ones that had found meaning while they worked, had a higher job performance and more organizational commitment. But there's one more step we can take by helping that janitor connect their actual job task with the organization's overall objectives. And I'm like, what if you could do that? What if they said, you know what, I'm going to make sure this hallway remains free of spills. Why? Because the nurses need to get bodies through here quickly. I want to make sure there's no trash, in the waiting room so that a family can mourn together without, the smell of onions or whatever. If they could connect the dots, because Barry Schwartz said they connected with things outside of their normal duties. And I'm like, no, don't do that to them. Help them connect the dots inside their actual job task, inside the things on their job description. Help them connect that with the mission of the hospital. Man, you got some folks that are going to kill it and never go anywhere.
I got to piggyback on that just for a second, Jackie, if you don't mind. We're working on this project right now with Chick-fil-A where we're trying to help people connect even the most mundane tasks to their meaningful goals, because somebody's got to do it. And I found this way back in the day when John F. Kennedy said we were going to put a man on the moon. The first time after that speech that he went and toured a NASA facility, the very first time, one of the people he met in the NASA facility was a janitor. And he shook his hands and he said, hey, the guy said, Mr. President, and he introduced himself and he said, President Kennedy asked him, what do you do here? and the janitor at NASA said, I'm helping put a man on the moon.
Boom.
And I think what you're saying, Casey, is right. We don't need to have these other things. We need to say, how does your mundane task, because sometimes they are mundane, they're not fun or exciting,
Mine too.
connect with meaningful outcomes.
Yes.
So I love it.
As passionate as we are about going back and forth about these ideas, even something like, the emails that had to come before we all got here, those things don't fire me up. That drains me. Having to have to coordinate and all this stuff, this is life-giving to me. But then having to coordinate it and all those things is a little bit draining. But I have to be able to connect those tasks that I don't love with the overall mission of getting here so we can share these great ideas. And that's what helps us. We all have tasks, and no matter what work we do, if it's the most, glamorous, if we're, brain surgeon saving lives, when we get finished and we have to go do the doctor's report, they don't love that. It doesn't energize anybody. But it's like, if you can connect the dots between this report, and if I don't do this report, here's how we could fail in the future. Man, that's,
So
we can keep on going around, but that fires me up.
This is really great. And I've worked at several places that I think could benefit from that perspective. This here, everyone who works here is so devoted to the mission of the organization that doesn't, I guess the lack of engagement doesn't happen as much, which is one reason I like this job. But I have worked at places where that little bit, like talking to the kennel cleaner at the vet hospital, I could just see how much of a difference that would make in their happiness. And I love thinking about that. And you guys both got, I don't know if you noticed, but you both got a little bit more animated when you were talking about this. So I can tell that this is what makes you guys' job really meaningful to you.
Yeah.
How about writing the books, like the actual process of writing? That can be a little bit mundane. Did you apply that while you were both writing? I don't like doing this. I don't know if you did like writing or not, but I'm not sure that I like this part, but it's going to do all these good things for people. Did you have to do that?
Kevin?
No doubt. I mean, yeah. So one of the books I read, Anne Lamott has a book, Bird by Bird, about writing. Jackie, you love it. Just those kind of things helped me. I think it was, why am I drawing a blank? Was it Ernest Hemingway or one of the guys said, I think Ernest Hemingway said, writing is easy. This old school quote. He said, you just sit down at a typewriter and bleed. So, I mean, it is painful sometimes. So yeah, I think you got to be passionate about the message that you're trying to get out there, because I'll just tell you, writing a book is not fun. And even if you sell a lot of them, you don't make a lot of money writing books. You got to really believe that this is going to help some people.
So I love you said that you did it. You wrote the book because you wanted the message to get out there, and you said I got to really be passionate about it. And that's where I feel like, to me, I want to fight the whole world right now, and we're like, do what makes you happy or do what you're passionate about. That makes me so irritated, because what people do is they run into what you just said. You mentioned you're very passionate about getting the message out, not so much passionate about sitting behind a typewriter. So to me, it's like if we can connect with that really the need that we're meeting, that's what we're going for. Is that going to help some people when it gets out there? Now, I will tell you, on the other hand, I actually enjoyed writing this stupid book. I told somebody, I was like, you know what? I'm the only person who's ever written a book while he played Go Fish. Because I have 3 little girls, they're 8, 7, and 6. And so they'd be like, Daddy, it's your turn. I'll play, and I'll write 3 or 4 sentences, and then I'll play again. And, I did not want it to take away from my commitment as a dad and to be present with the kids. But, so sometimes we were just trying to find time. But man, I really loved writing this because I love talking about this so much. But I will tell you where it hit for me, where it hit to uphill trudge is, you don't just send out the first copy, So it's the writing, the editing is like, no. And I had a great team at C. Grant and Company that helped me with this. But I mean, if they made it go from my ramblings to a very consolidated, cool, easy to follow book. Because I told one time the lady that was kind of the main editor, I was like, I think sometimes you know what I want to say better than I know what I want to say. So she would help me. She would say, what do you mean by this? And I had to say it again. I'm like, well, it's obvious what I said. And then finally, when she would get out of me what I really meant, I'd be like, oh, that's a much better way to say it. So the editing process was definitely the through the sand for me.
That happens with a lot of people. So good for you for sticking it out. It sounds like you had a really awesome editor. So I don't see any more questions in the audience right now, and we're getting close to the hour. Is there anything you guys wanted to wrap up with specifically?
Man, I'm looking forward to reading Lynn's, Kevin. I'm gonna snatch it up, brother. So I really appreciate that. And we were talking a minute ago. We actually didn't realize we know a lot of the same people. So we just met tonight for the first time, but we realized today sharing Hub City on our social media, a lot of the same people were kind of, liking and commenting. So I think that's going to be interesting to connect. And I appreciate what you're doing, man. I really do.
I think it's because everybody knows our friend Graham. That's probably why we know the same people. Hey, I appreciate Maggie. Everybody, thanks for being here. But Maggie, thanks for so much of your insight tonight. That was awesome. Hope to connect on that. And Jackie, thanks for being such a great host and what you guys are doing at Hub City. I can't wait to read Casey's book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited for you guys, and we really appreciated having you guys and seeing you meet for the first time and just like hit it off and have a great discussion was really spectacular.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a comment in there that was like, you guys should get together for events more often. So I think that was from Maggie, because you guys are just so naturally bounce off each other with these things. So thank you so much for coming and joining.
Kevin has way cooler hair than me. I don't know if I want to do these events with him.
You look more distinguished.
I think you both look great.
Thanks, Jackie. This is awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we really appreciate it. Remember to buy their books, hopefully from your local independent bookstore if we're not local to you. We have signed copies here, and we really want to support them and their work in business as well. All right. Thank you guys again, and we're going to say goodnight for now.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye now.